I used to go to all of the big like post-production audio houses and facilities, and I'd say, do you guys ever work on, like, is it possible to, like, use the facilities if I'm working on something, and use one of their rooms? And a lot of times they were open to those kinds of arrangements.
Tune in as we give flowers to Black men and women making waves in the audio industry. I'm your host, Sidney Evans, and this is Beyond the Threshold. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beyond the Threshold. I'm your host, Sidney Evans, an award-winning audio editor and producer. For those of you who don't know, on this show, I interview Black men and women working in the audio industry, highlighting the lessons and experience it takes to achieve success in the field. And in preparing for today's episode and having this guest on, and doing my research, a strong word came to mind. The word prodigy came to mind because it seems like you've been really locked in from a young age. And so I appreciate you coming on and wanted to share that talent and not only having a talent, but pursuing it as a career. To give a little bit of background on today's guest, he's a Brooklyn-based music composer for film, television, dance, and theater. He's worked on numerous award-winning projects and has collaborated with a number of talented filmmakers and storytellers. In addition to his work in music, he's a post-production sound designer and producer, and also works as a freelance sound engineer for WNET 13, PBS's flagship station and the most watched public TV channel in the nation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Evan Joseph. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So yeah, I just want to kind of really just jump straight into it and get your story, man. So can you share a little bit about your background, when you noticed you had a gift, and when you decided you were just gonna pursue it full throttle?
Yeah, thank you. I don't really have a big moment where it kind of happened. It's just kind of like from a really young age. I was always interested in music. My parents played a lot of music in the house. We always had a little keyboard as long as I can remember, and I always used to mess around with it. And then, as I got into TV and movies and video games, the music was always something that I really paid attention to and really enjoyed. And I just kind of decided one day, like, oh, I'm going to do music for that stuff, which sounds crazy, but that's just kind of how it happened. And as I was growing up, I started playing instruments. I took, piano lessons. I played clarinet and saxophone and, taught myself a little bit of guitar and drums and all these kinds of things. And then, went to college for music composition. And then from there, I started getting into more audio kind of stuff and working in film, doing audio editing, sound design, along with music composing and producing and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of just been there the whole time, and yeah, just been enjoying it.
That's cool. So I know you mentioned as a youth or a kid you play multiple instruments, and you're kind of when you go on a quest for like discovery and you're just exploring, you kind of try all these different things. Like, what was the next step as far as like, okay, I'm going to actually start doing this, like outside of just playing instruments? Like, okay, what was your first, the first computer you had? What was the first piece of equipment? What kind of was like the first thing where you like kind of just jumped into it and doing what you thought it would take to do it on like a higher level?
Got you. Somehow, I don't remember how, but, I did some kind of research. I don't know if it was like, Ask Jeeves or on some kind of forum on some music group. But, I was like, all right, I need to start figuring out how to do this stuff with the computer. So the first thing I got was a very basic, like, music notation software. And I remember, I think I asked one of the music teachers at my middle school, because I think I saw he had made some sheet music. So I was like, how did you do that? He told me about the software he had, and like, I gave him some money. And when he went, to the store, he got it for me. So that was like the first thing, and then the next step was figuring out how to take that to the next level, which is more, software that's able to have different instrument sounds and things like that, VSTs, if you know that, and, sound fonts and these kinds of things that we had to deal with back in the day. So that was the next step. And I remember my mom took me to like a music store to get like a virtual instrument. I think it was like Native Instruments Compact at the time. Now people are probably familiar with Contact, which is like their big library of sounds, and like Compact was like a very small version of that with just like a handful of instruments and things like that. So I started messing around with that. I had a friend at church that started rapping, and I was talking to him, and I was just like, "Oh, I could probably make the beats for that." It was like,
Right,
"Oh, I could
right,
probably do
right.
that." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And so like, I started making beats for him to rap to, and like for years, he would just like, I would just make stuff and send it to him, and that was it. And then when I got to high school, there was on one of the, I don't remember how it came about, but I think I was on like a music forum for like there was like a video game remix website where people make remixes to games, and like you could listen to them, remixes to the music from games, I mean.
Okay, got you.
And there was one guy who was looking for a composer for like he was making like a RPG video game, using like a computer program where you can make a video game. And he was looking for a composer, so I reached out to him, and I was like, I could probably do that. So then that was like the first little like independent video game thing I did. I made the music for that, which is still fun to go back and listen to sometimes. But yeah, and then I was in college, and then it was I studied music composition. It was electronic and acoustic, so I'm writing for instruments. I'm writing for voice, and then I'm also writing doing computer music. Learning how to use the computer to make different sounds using synthesizers and things like that. And then so we had concerts every semester, so I'm writing pieces that are getting performed and getting played. So that was cool. And then as soon as I got out of college, I got my first like gig on a film. There was a local film. I went to college in Tampa. There was a local indie filmmaker who had a film, and he was looking for somebody to do the music and the sound. So that's how I got into sound, was because I wanted to do the music for this film. And he was like, well, we need somebody to also do the sound editing, sound design. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. Because I had all the skills to do it, I was pretty confident I could figure it out, So I kind of just lied and said, yeah, sure, that's no problem. And then I just figured it out,
Also, I want to jump in real quick because and I'm glad you mentioned like shared the point where doing the composition and the sound design kind of came together, because that was one of the questions that I asked for you, that I had for you. But before getting into that, it seems like you had this very formal kind of traditional aspect of you pursuing music, and then you also combined it with like I guess the doing it in this age, in this digital age, and what type of programs and equipment that you could use to which ultimately will help you once you actually start doing films and things like that, because it can make what you're doing much more efficient and better without having to get so into the other aspect of it, which is the more traditional. But was that something that you were like kind of consciously doing? It's like, I want to have this like real foundation, and then just allow it to really take me to whatever interests me outside of just the basic knowledge of it.
It all kind of happened just kind of naturally. It's like, if I'm like a middle schooler, high schooler, and even though I played in the band and played these instruments, I wasn't thinking about writing music for other people to play necessarily. So it was kind of like, well, how am I gonna get the music made? So then it's like I need the computer software to do it. I need like these virtual instruments to do it. And kind of the music I was envisioning in my head was all kinds of different styles, but like not something I'd be able to pull a group of people together to play, I didn't have any access to recording equipment, outside of like a single microphone or something. So then that's kind of how the computer aspect came about. Was it's just like that's what I needed to make the sounds and make the music, that I guess that I was interested in. And then from there, when I got to college, I continued with that. But then there's also now the aspect of like actually having live musicians being kind of available for you to play, or to play your music rather. So then that, opens up a whole other realm, because now you're hearing real people playing, you know, the things. It's not a computer, violin, and those sounds of course have come a long way, and a lot of like major films and productions use those virtual sounds, but it's just different when you have like a real live person playing it and you're in the room, and it's a whole different vibe. So then that came about, and then now since then it's like a combination. Now, sometimes I'm using live musicians, sometimes I'm using computers, sometimes it's a hybrid, or most often it's a hybrid of both. So I feel like it was just like a really natural progression. It wasn't really a conscious thing, but it just happened to work out.
Okay. Oh, cool. So I guess now that you're out of college and you mentioned that you worked on the first project you had was on film and scoring, but then you're also, I guess you're like out in the real world and you're practicing, and there's money and terms and business and all this stuff that you got to get figured out, along with just the skill and the creative. So I guess I kind of want to get it in both aspects. So working on those early productions, early scoring, early sound design. I guess what was your process for? Because I'm sure you have a tried and true process in some capacity, but you're doing music and sound design, and that's a whole new, like you said, workflow and process. So are you really like honing in and refining that, and then also what are you learning as far as the business aspect of of doing what you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a process of learning all of that stuff. I've, what year is it? It's like 2025. I've been out of school for almost 15 years. And I've been working, yeah, so for the last 15 years, it's been, I've been in the professional kind of realm. And yeah, just the process, learning those things, whether it's figuring out on my own. There was this thing where kind of like I just did what made sense, or like how I thought, for sound, for instance, I'm like, all right, well, first you gotta like lay down whatever the background sounds are, and then you gotta like do this and that and edit this, and then I came to find out later that kind of the things I was doing just kind of intuitively ended up being what the most common or proper workflow would be. I met other people in the industry, which was great. My brother does production sound mixing, so he's like the sound guy on set, on TV and film. And him and I had a little company for a while, and we had another sound artist who had experience doing post production sound editing and things like that. So I was able to learn from him, which was helpful. And yeah, just kind of figuring out as I go. And then the business aspect, it's like it's you live and you learn. First maybe you're not thinking about contracts and stuff until you run into the first person that doesn't pay, or is changing the deal on you, and then you're like, all right, well, now I need to protect myself. What's a standard contract look like? And then you ask people, you Google it. Now you're protected that way. Now it's like you run into the problem where there's endless rounds of changes and notes, and you're like, all right, well, no, that's something that needs to be figured out ahead of time. Now, if you're working on something that's a certain level of, if you're getting a certain level of payment, I guess, out of it, you can't afford to be working on this for like 3 months going back and forth with notes. You got to tell them like either you're paying more, or there's a limit to like how much we can do revisions and stuff, because we got to get on to the next thing. So all the business stuff, just like a mix of figuring it out the hard way, and also getting tips from people who've been there and learning that way, and doing how much research you can do, on your own. So yeah, the business aspect, it still can be a little tricky. There's always this thing where they're like, "What's your rate?" And you're like, "Well, what's your budget?"
Oh, I
And
know too
depending on,
well, all too well, man.
there's always that, depending on what it is, you don't want to lowball yourself, or you don't want to miss out on a really good collaboration because they don't have the money to pay what they think they need to pay you and these kinds of things. So it's always a little bit of a dance in a way, but it definitely gets easier. And Yeah, and I feel like a lot of times early on, maybe you feel like you're missing out on everything, and maybe as you get older, you think, if I miss out on that job, it's not the end of the world. Something else is gonna come along. So it gets easier in that way too.
That's actually a perfect transition, because obviously, like, the terms of, the money, the financial aspect of it is one thing to consider. But I'm curious to know, like, what other things do you consider that determine whether you will take on or like decline an offer for a project? Because it's not always, money is a very big thing, but it's not always about that. Like you said, am I gonna have to I'm gonna have to be working on one project for 3 months to where I'm, missing out on other collaborations or projects? It could be their expectation as far as response time for emails and you know the logistics of working on a project. So what other things do you consider outside of just money?
Yeah, it could be who the person is, the creative or the team that you're working with. There's value in that, and if you think it could be a really good experience, or it could lead to more work kind of down the road with some people who you really like, the work that they do and things like that. So that's always a good reason to jump into something. It could be just like the length of the project, if it's a really quick thing. Sometimes it's good to just get in on a project, finish it up real quick, get paid, and then move on to the next thing. There's value in that. So there might be a case where they don't have a lot of money, but it's like it's wrapping up quick. And usually you think you would want to charge more for a rush job, but then, like I said, sometimes it's good to just jump into something and like focus real quick, get it done, and then like move on to the next thing. So yeah, and then just the work itself, the project, aside from the people creating it, just like the content, I guess you could say, like what's this film about? What's the focus of it? Do I feel like it's something I really want to add, my style or my voice to? So yeah, all of those kinds of things I think help when selecting a project. Yeah, and then sometimes it's like, just to stay busy. Like if you got nothing else going on, it's not gonna lock you down too much where if the next thing comes along you're kind of stuck, then it's like, all right, let's do it. Let's stay busy, get the creative energy kind of, going still.
Got you. I guess there could be seasons like, okay, I'm working on one thing that may be a little bit longer, or you might be working on multiple things at once, or things back to back. And I know that it can get hectic. You got to stay organized. You got to make sure you're like kind of sitting with what you're doing and not and trying to feel your way through it, instead of trying to just like, oh, I got to get this done, so I'm just going to do something, when it's like you didn't really give yourself the opportunity for it to kind of come naturally. But then you have to get everything done within a certain time frame. So like, what do you have things built in to where you're able to, like, okay, I'm hitting a block, I need to take a break? Is it just a feeling like I'll hit a block, or is it like, okay, I know I need to rest my ears, I need to step away for a second, not only to be fresh and constantly inspired when you're working, but also so you also experience life too. Like there's a whole other life outside of, professional. You have obviously dating, relationships, family, hobbies, everything. I'm against everybody wanting to monetize everything. And I was like, no, sometimes you just need to have hobbies. And sometimes inspiration from the work comes when you're doing those other things. It's not when you're actually trying to figure it out, kind of putting that stress on yourself. So yeah, I guess how do you kind of just still live a normal grounded life and not get overwhelmed or burnt out on all that you have on your plate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, a lot of different ways really. When I was first starting for the first like I would say almost like 10 years, it's kind of like you want to take on every project you can. You want to, do everything. And then, when it's like that and when you have a lot of different projects, if you get stuck on something, then it's kind of like, all right, well, either just take a break from everything for a little bit, or you could just move on to the other thing I'm working on. If this thing's got me stuck, all right, let me work on this other thing that I'm doing. And you kind of go back and forth, and then when you come back around to the other one, maybe you can get past like the wall or whatever. So that helped for a long time. And then now for the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, I kind of stopped doing so much. I stopped spending a lot of time, I guess, like seeking out work, because I was in a fortunate place where a lot of the work would just come. I had built enough relationships with people. I'd worked on enough projects that people would refer me, or I'd have repeat sort of collaborations and clients and things like that. So I would just kind of relax. And I know, like, if I finish something, I don't have to go start worrying too much about what the next thing is and looking for it. I can take that time to just relax, and I know that the next thing's gonna come pretty soon. That's been a little more difficult over the last year. I think with the strikes and things like that, everything kind of slowed down. So last year was a little more slow than I'd want it to be. And also, I started focusing a little bit more on music, because some of the sound work can get really intensive and take up a lot of time. And then when I get like a music gig, it'd be hard to balance those two things, and I'd be spending all my time on other projects, and I couldn't really put the time and energy into the music gig. So I started kind of doing less sound work, which helped. So then now I'm turning down a lot of jobs that, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking maybe I should be taking, financially. You want to make sure that you're good, but then creatively, I'm like, well, I want to be able to do my best work when I have a project and not be spread too thin. So yeah, so then just kind of trusting that, something else is going to come, and then I can take that time in between projects to relax and do something else, play a little bit of games, or, I do a lot of creative writing kind of recently, doing that, or spending time with, family, friends, and all of that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good to know, because my significant other, she's always on me about like I know you want to get the bag, or all these terms that people use, just like basically, which is just different ways to say I'm just working nonstop, and I'm not sleeping properly, and because when with a lot of those things is like, okay, yeah, maybe the creative work turns out good, but like you said, you're not sleeping properly. You're making bad food decisions because you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning working, and it can affect a lot of other areas of your life outside of I'm sure a lot of people can justify it and say, oh, well, the work I'm doing is good. It's like, yeah, but what about the rest of your life? And things that are important, especially as you get older. You want to take care of your health. And I know some people say from the word balance, because you have to be, seems like you have to be obsessed at something to be good at it. And I know there are seasons where you have to really lock in and do more work than others. But at some point, you are going to have a good balance. So I always make sure I touch on that. And as far as you saying you were spread too thin, so when you're good at something, it's that you become known for the thing. You're known for music, in whatever capacity you want to specifically highlight. But then also, you have people like reaching out to be on podcasts, people wanting you to do things that may not be necessarily related to the thing itself, but it's just like an extension of what you have done. So you're speaking, you're heads and leaders of groups and organizations and things. So, and I know are and have been involved in a lot of things. So I guess what is like, I guess it kind of comes more of a people thing than it does a creative thing when you kind of get into those realms. So, and as audio people, I think some of the time the reason why they take a liking to it outside of the creative and technical stuff is that you're behind the scenes. You're not out in the open. You can kind of be appreciated and respected and make a living for yourself, but you don't have to be in front street necessarily. So when it is time, you do become well known for what you do, and you have to do more of those people facing things. Was that something that came like natural, or was it an adjustment? I know it's been an adjustment for me when I got asked to speak at like a festival for the first time. Like I was petrified because I just this is all I cared about before, just being in front of this computer and doing that. So was that like a learning moment for you?
Yeah, for me, it's like a mix. It's like I've presented at seminars, or I've been on panels and things like that. And that kind of stuff is easy. I don't have a problem speaking to people in public like that. But then if it's something like, like you mentioned, like a lot of our work is behind the scenes in a way. And like if I'm working on a film, for instance, I'm like at the end of the process, everybody did their job. I'm coming in at the very end. And then now it's like I get invited to a screening or like a rap party or like or something like that. And now it's like the whole cast and crew is there and everybody knows each other and everybody's like, remembering all the time they had on set. And I'm just like, oh, hey, like I just worked on it after the fact. And those kinds of situations are hard for me. I feel like it's hard for me to connect and insert myself into there and network and make the connections when it's like that. So that's something that I try to work on. And sometimes I'm like, man, I don't want to go to that screening. There's the aspect of sometimes you don't want to hear the thing you worked on because either you heard it too much already or you don't want to, you're scared of the response maybe. And then there's the aspect of I'm not gonna know anybody there. So sometimes you have to fight through those feelings to kind of just get out there and try to network. So yeah, it's a mix, if it's in front of a big group or I'm on stage or something, it's kind of just like performing in a way, which I'm used to. But if it's like more, intimate kind of like close circles networking, then sometimes it's hard and I got to push myself to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. The being disconnected from a part, like you said, they have all these, they basically family for however long the production was or whatever. And a lot of people get really close, and friends and stuff like that. And like you said, you're kind of detached. That reminds me, because I was working with this production company. It's kind of like my first real, I would just say like big boy job as far as like doing dialogue editing and stuff like that in the podcast space. But we would have like these productions, and it would be like we did a show with Lisa Silverstone, who I remember from she was in Clueless and Batman and Robin, which I don't think did that great, but as a kid you think it's a good movie. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I realized, like, man, I'm not gonna be in on any of these recordings. I don't, there's no interaction. It's just once it's done, okay, you cut it like this, and then you move on. And I'm like, man, this is some cool stuff, and I'm missing a lot. I feel like I was missing a lot. So I can definitely, obviously, what you had to do was on a different level, but I guess it kind of comes from the same place. So that's cool. So I guess, I always want to, not always, it's sometimes, and I'm kind of mad at myself because some episodes, I just get into the episode and I kind of, you plan to go one place and you end up somewhere else. And that's not to say it's not good, but you just, certain things that you wanted to highlight that you didn't necessarily get a chance to. But I guess for people like wanting to do this, who are newly inspired, I don't know, maybe they know they want to do something around audio or sound, and they kind of don't know which direction to go, but they obviously have an interest in it. And that's one of the reasons why I created the show, is to kind of help spark some of that, because as I went on this path, as far as Black people, I didn't see as many, not to say they're not there, but kind of branding themselves and making a name themselves like online and in a professional way. It's outside of just doing the work. I wish there were more podcasts. I wish there were more things like that I could have listened to, just kind of just avoid some of the mistakes I made and things that I didn't know at any particular time. Like, but what advice would you give as far as just, wanting to pursue audio or sound in some type of way, and then having a healthy level of trying different things and then seeing where your interests take you and figuring out what you're good at? Like, how do you get a start, so to speak, would be the question.
First, I would like just get familiar with the software and things like that, and the editing, process and stuff. You could get something free like what is it, Audacity. I'm trying to think of like a free software. You could do something like that, or like the free version of Pro Tools to, and just start messing with sounds and learning how it works and cutting and, editing, mixing. And then from there, maybe get linked up if you're interested in film or TV, maybe get linked up with something local, like a school, university, students that are making films. Try to see if you could work on that kind of stuff. With podcasts, I don't even remember how I got into podcast editing. Yeah, I mean, somebody I probably knew from the film, sphere probably just like hit me up to do it or something. But yeah, I don't know. Just I would say watch, videos, try to talk to people, even if you gotta write a cold email or something to try to get in touch with somebody who's doing it. Just reach out. I feel like more times than not, people are very helpful, especially in the audio realm. When I was in New York, I recently moved to Florida, but I used to go to all of the big like post production audio houses and facilities, and I would just go and shoot them an email, say, hey, can I check out the space, meet you guys. They'd always say, yeah, come on. They'd give you a tour. I'd say, do you guys ever work on like smaller projects where you need like people to do stuff, or like is it possible to like use the facilities if I'm working on something? And for some of the smaller ones, you can't afford to go to a big mixing stage or something, you could go use one of their rooms, and a lot of times they were open to those kinds of arrangements. So yeah, I think just talk to people, just like even if you got to go out of your way a little bit to kind of meet people in the industry. I feel like a lot of people are very open and willing to kind of like help you out. It doesn't feel like they're worried about you coming and taking their spot or something. It's like the more that they help, it's like everybody else is gonna just get better.
That's a good point. And I don't know, it's something about the audio industry. I think it's kind of a relief. Is like, obviously video is like the sexy medium. Obviously you have the video and the audio component, but I feel like sometimes as audio people, the value in what we do is sometimes overlooked, not appreciated. So when we find other people who love audio just as much, I think it's just a relief. It's like, okay, somebody loves it just as much as I do. Somebody appreciates it. Because a lot of the time, especially like, I don't know, I know there's a new generation of people who got introduced to audio through podcasting, and whether they decide to stay there or venture out into the other realms within audio, it's like you spend a lot of time trying to convince people that it's just even worth it. Like that they should spend money on it. They should invest in it. So for somebody to obviously to become a pro at it, you have to put in time that it's like, okay, there's no immediate return. There's no guarantee. I just love it. So this is what I do. So I think for me, sometimes it's a relief to meet other audio people as well. And in terms of like the future of audio, like I know the AI thing in all industries is like, it seems like every day there's just something new. It's kind of hard to keep up with. And it's kind of hard to decipher like, okay, what's going to stick and what's not just, some people trying to jump on the bandwagon, and what's actually going to be beneficial and help like streamline the process of some of the stuff that we do. So I guess what's your take on AI specifically in audio? And then are there any tools also in audio with like machine learning and extensions of kind of within the same realm, like that can help you get started, work more efficiently, be more creative faster? Is there anything that you've like dibbled and dabbled in or explored or even just kind of implemented into your workflow long term?
Yeah, there's I mean this isn't anything new, and it's not AI or machine learning or anything, but I do use like some kind of like automated processes. So, for instance, what's the name of well, I mean, it's essentially like shortcuts. You know how in your software you can do shortcuts and things like that. So there's certain software where you can just with the push of a button you can do like a series of events that you kind of set up. So I do some of that with my editing where it's like if I'm editing like all right, if you're getting rid of breath, like like the breath or whatever in a podcast, right? This client, they don't like the breaths, they want them out of there. you know you got to like make that cut and then add a little fade on each side, or maybe you're filling it in with tone. So those like little tedious tasks that you're doing like maybe 100 times, I have where I just highlight it and then I push a button and it automatically cuts it and then puts the two fades on the end. So sometimes if I'm working on something like that, I'm just going through highlighting, pushing a button, highlight, pushing a button, and I'm saving time on that kind of stuff. When I'm working with Channel 13, we name our files in a certain way. So when I finish a mix, when I have like the stereo mix, and then I have like just the dialogue, just the music, just the sound effects, and all of those different tracks, I just push one button and it names them all in like a second. So I don't have to go into every track and like write what the name is. So that saves time. So, there's buttons I have where I could pull up a certain plugin that I use all the time. And even like, it'll render it also. Like if I push a certain button, it'll like go to a preset and just like render it if I know that I'm going to be using a specific preset for something. So there's things like that I use. I have a Stream Deck that I use for the buttons. I use this software called SoundFlow. Are you familiar with SoundFlow?
I feel like it's so many tools with the word sound in it. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say yes, but I'm not 100% sure.
No, for sure. Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, SoundFlow is a good software for creating these processes. So that kind of stuff is sped up my workflow a bunch, and like I paid, $10 a month for the SoundFlow software, and users can make their own shortcuts and processes, and that kind of stuff has really helped. As far as actual like AI, or machine learning or that kind of stuff, I don't know too much about any of that kind of stuff. I feel like it's taken away a little bit of work. I think if it's making things for editors, sometimes on smaller jobs, and then the video editors, then a lot of times the video editors are doing the sound work. And sometimes it's like it's nothing too intensive or whatever, and it's something they could handle, and that's fine. But something that you used to need to get a separate sound person to do. Sometimes those opportunities aren't there. I'm finding that with music, especially on commercial stuff. Now it's like instead of paying a composer, maybe they're just going to a music library and getting music. I haven't run across anybody using AI to generate music yet. I know that kind of stuff exists. I've heard on YouTube different songs and things like that made with AI, but I haven't run into anybody actually using it. So that kind of stuff is rough.
That's because it's not good right now. Like the actual making the music is not. It's not good. So that's why we haven't got to that point. And who knows? Like you never know. It might take years, and you might make it one day, and it's like, wow, this is. I can't tell
Yeah.
the difference. You never really know. But I know there's a lot of craze around like taking work and taking jobs and in life in general, like obviously there's the two extremes. There's an extreme for everything. You have hot and cold. You have night and day. Ultimately, like somewhere in the middle is kind of where things always end up. So I think it'll be somewhere in the middle. I think it'll be a quality tool that can help people that do audio speed up things and streamline it. Will it, with the evolution of technology, it always takes a little bit of business away from somebody. I mean, or sometimes big, like with the transition from music from CDs to digital. Like you have things like that happen, but I don't think it's necessarily where things are gonna get replaced or eliminated. It's just evolving. So that's how I like to look at it. And I don't try to go in with the being completely sold on it. It's just like this could be done for everything, but then I'm also not super resistant. Like I'm a purist, and this should never, be incorporated. I like to live somewhere in the middle. So thank you for kind of sharing your take and how you have or have not implemented it. So yeah, man, I think we're kind of getting down to the end of the episode. I appreciate everything you've shared so far, but do want to ask some questions for this ending segment just to kind of get a general idea of your taste and the things the preferences that you have as far as music and other things related to sound outside of your work. So first question I want to ask is, what's your favorite album of all time?
I'm really bad with like lists and favorites, and I feel like it changes a lot. But it depends on the setting and all these kinds of things. But a few might be like the Random Access Memories album by Daft Punk. They had a lot of collaborations on there sonically. Like that's an amazing album. Awaken My Love, Childish Gambino. The first one where he wasn't really rapping. It was like a soul record. The production and the kind of recreation of like the 70s kind of funk and soul kind of sound on that album's amazing. And then like a lot of like hip hop 90s, boom bap, East Coast kind of tribe or yeah, a lot of tribe albums. I'll sometimes Midnight Marauders is like my favorite. Sometimes it's like you beats rhymes, in life or oh yeah, so all that kind of stuff.
Okay, you got some obviously with the '90s boom bap and stuff like that. I'm more familiar, but with the Daft Punk and the Childish Gambino reference you made, not as familiar. Which is why I ask these questions. I don't do it so everybody can have the same taste that I have or listen to the same things I have. Yeah, it's like it's cool to share that moment. It was like, oh, that's my favorite too, but it's also good to be put on to some stuff. So I'm gonna check those out and based off your suggestions. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. I guess and the last question you kind of mentioned multiple. So the actual question is favorite music producer, but I'm sure you probably have like a group or everybody does. They have it just depends on your mood. One day your favorite might be this, like you said, one day it might be that. But whatever comes to you in the moment, I feel like it came to you, for a reason. So interested to know your favorite producer or producers.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of Kanye stuff. He's a questionable person for these days. But strictly speaking, music. The production is amazing. I really like lately a lot of Alchemist kind of stuff. He's really been breaking through even more, kind of. And then Ludwig Göransson, he's a composer and a producer. He did pretty much all the Childish Gambino albums, and he's done the film scores for like all the Ryan Coogler, Fruitvale and Black Panther, and he just won the Oscar for Oppenheimer. But yeah, I feel like
do you know if he's working on because Michael B. Jordan and Coogler have. Do you know if he did it for that movie?
Yeah, for the new one. I would guess he is, but I'm not sure. I haven't looked up who the composer is. I would say most likely he is. He's done all the Ryan's other films. But yeah, Ludwig Göransson. But yeah, as a aside from the composing, just like as a producer, he's stretched out beyond Childish Gambino stuff, and he's been working on with other artists and things like that. But yeah, his production is really dope also.
Yeah, he is. He is. All right, next, for your favorite film score or soundtrack.
Yeah, a big one when I was younger for me was Signs. You
Mm-hmm.
know the M Night Shyamalan.
That was his like first one, wasn't it? Big one.
Yeah, well, after Sixth Sense, I think.
After, yeah, after,
Yeah, after
after
Sixth
Six
Sense, I
Sense, yeah.
think he did Unbreakable and Signs. Yeah, James Newton Howard is was the composer for that. Interstellar,
Mm-hmm.
Hans Zimmer. The music in that is amazing. Those might be like two of my more recent or current, I guess, favorites that I can think of right now.
Got you. I guess when people ask me this question, sometimes like I'll say like Back to the Future is one that still stands out for me. But one that I'm thinking of, and I love this movie as a kid because I'm a video game kid, was Mortal Kombat. Like the music for that was amazing. It was because
Yeah,
it wasn't commercial at all. It was like, and even listening to it on its own, it's like, man, this is impressive. So
yeah. Me and my brothers had it wasn't the first Mortal Kombat, but it was the second movie. We had a cassette tape of the soundtrack from the second movie, which the music's similar. It's like a lot of like electronic
yeah,
kind of like but like yeah, that was dope. We listened to that. I have it here somewhere in my studio. But yeah, the Mortal Kombat Annihilation soundtrack, we had the little cassette tape of that. We played that so much.
the soundtrack probably made more than the movie because that movie was terrible. But
It's awful.
all right, last one is favorite TV theme song.
Yeah. You seen The Mandalorian?
No.
Yeah, that's another Ludwig Göransson production. Yeah, The Mandalorian music is so dope. A really cool mix of like it sounds like tribal music, but then it has that heroic kind of like Disney-esque kind of vibe also. You know, The Simpsons is
Right.
classic. Danny Elfman uh did that one. And then stuff like, Game of Thrones or Succession. I don't know if you've seen
hmm
Succession, but that main theme with the piano and the hip like trip hop kind of like vibe.
Yeah, I haven't seen Succession yet, but we watch me and my I'm making another reference. My significant other, we watch a lot of the award shows, so that's how I get put on the stuff that I'm not necessarily. It's like, okay, if this is winning all the awards, then it must be. So that's how I learned about Succession. So I'm gonna check it out, but I haven't got to it yet. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Thank you for the diversity in answers. You probably had the most diverse answers to these questions. So glad we was able to share a couple things, but then me learn about a couple things as well. In general, just as far as sharing your story. I know you've done a lot, man. So kind of just trying to have to recall some of those things and let everybody into your world a little bit. I know everybody's not willing to do that, so I appreciate it. But before we end completely, can you kind of just share how people can find you online if they want to support what you got going on, check out some of your stuff? I know you say you're getting more into doing the music thing nowadays, so that I can listen to your music. Just the places they can find you online, and as far as you're willing or able to share some of the current and upcoming things you're working on.
Yeah, evanjosephmusic.com. You can go there for my music. Instagram, at evanjosephmusic. And yeah, this year I'm not sure what I'm working on just yet. It's getting started now. I do a lot of work with the Black Sands brand. They're a comic book publishing company, and they're working on an anime movie right now. So maybe I'll work on that. I haven't heard from them about it, but I've done, over the years I've done music for their app and for their they're on Shark Tank. I did the music for the Shark Tank demo and trailer, and I've done all kinds of stuff with them. So we'll see. Maybe I'm working on that. And yeah, I did last year. I did some stuff with Cartoon Network, which was really dope. And I haven't heard. It was a short film, a series of short films. I worked on one of them, and hopefully that's getting a release sometime soon. That'll be really cool to share. So yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, if you follow me online, then of course I'll keep everybody updated on what's going on.
All right. Well, there you have it. You all know where you can find them online to support. And yeah, man, thank you, my brother, for hopping on with me on such short notice, and us not having connected at all previously. Just appreciate your open-mindedness. So that will wrap today's episode. And for those listening, we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. If you'd like to work with me or connect, please go to soundbysid.com and schedule a call. There you can also check out the full list of productions I've worked on. If you'd like to connect on social media, my handle is soundbysid.com on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm Sidney Evans on LinkedIn. Don't forget to follow Beyond the Threshold on Instagram as well. I'll catch you on the next episode.